Hey, thanks for dropping by and checking out this message. These lessons come from our Sunday gatherings at Victory Christian Church in Franklin, Indiana. Our 5th through 8th graders meet at 9 or 10:30 a.m. and our high schoolers meet from 6 to 8 p.m. If you find that this content brings value to your life, then please consider subscribing and hitting that bell so that you can be notified when we upload our next message. Our hope is that this video brings more clarity into your life as to who God is and what He wants for you in light of who Jesus is and what He's done for you. Enjoy and have a great day. Did you guys miss me? Okay, thank you. That makes me feel better. But I'm back and I feel excited to be here. It feels weird. I was just talking to somebody earlier, for personal reasons, whether it's vacation or having to travel for family-related stuff. I've been gone 2 Sundays this semester, and in the 3.5 years I've been here, I had never missed a Sunday night until this semester. So it feels weird. I feel a little disconnected and sad to be away from you guys. So I am glad to be back. So how are you guys doing tonight? You guys have a short week, right? Only 2 days? So that should make you a little bit more excited, right? Yeah. Thank you. Yes. So pumped. Okay, so we are in the middle of this series on I Have Questions. And so in this series, we've been talking a little bit about the stuff that, whether we talk about it a lot in church or not, it's stuff that comes up in our everyday lives, and we kind of need to know how to deal with it. And the reason we call I Have Questions is because, there's the typical things that we talk about in church, right? Forgiveness is good, you should do it. You should also read your Bible. You should also pray, and all this kind of stuff. We talk about God's grace and His love. We talk about, all of the stuff you should be doing in your personal life for spiritual growth, like devotions and stuff like that. And we talk about those things on a regular basis for a purpose. I mean, it's good. But there's some things that we really just don't talk about very often, but it is very near and dear to all of your lives. And it's stuff that you're going through, and we need to talk about some of these things. So tonight, we're going to be talking about something that you all have experienced, because I've talked with many of you, and I know what the bathrooms are like at your schools, and I know what kind of goes on, and when people get in trouble for things, but vaping, right? This is huge, all right? Everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it. It's like a common thing, okay? So why are we going to talk about it in church? And I'll get to some of that. But I recognize, before we even really get into this, is that there's probably 3 different categories of people in this room. There's probably a small category of people who's I know what vaping is, but other than that, I know it's e-cigarettes, but other than that, I don't know anything else about it, and I don't really care to know, okay? There's that group. There's also the group that's I know exactly what it is, because I have to deal with it every time I go to the bathroom at school, and I wish I didn't have to. Even if I wanted to do it, I don't know where to get one. I don't know any of that kind of stuff, and I'm good without it, right? And then there's another group in the room where maybe you have the answers to all those questions, and you know where to get it, and maybe you have one in your pocket right now. And this lesson, just let me guarantee you from the get-go, this is not a shame on you lesson, okay? So this is gray category. And this is why I want to explain this, because there's black and white things like Jesus says, love your neighbor, love God with all your heart, right? Sometimes they get more specific, don't steal from your neighbor. That's pretty specific, and that's listed several times. Don't lie to your neighbor. Not a whole lot of gray in there. But there's nothing in the Bible that says no vaping. Vaping's a sin, right? It's this gray area, right? And you could argue that it's bad for you, but you could also argue that soda is bad for you, right? And nobody seems to have a problem with that. So you could argue that sugar cereal is bad for you because there's too much sugar and not enough protein, right? There's so much that you could argue about, what makes this okay and this not? How do you define the gray? And so this lesson is not a guilt and shame kind of message around this topic. I just want that thrown out there, that's not what today is about. In fact, this day, whether you are, you've gotten involved with vaping or e-cigarettes or normal cigarettes or alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, right? this discussion applies to you. If you've never gotten involved in those things, if you've never gotten involved in vaping and drugs or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever, this still applies to you. So basically what I'm saying is this message applies to everybody. So don't tune out if you're like, vaping's not my deal, I don't care. Like, that's fine. Because it's kind of a bait and switch. Okay, I'll just be upfront with you. It's about vaping, but it's not about vaping tonight. Tonight's about something a little bit deeper than that. But vaping is just a convenient example we're going to use to talk about how we make decisions in general. Does that make sense? Is that cool with you guys? So it's about vaping, but it's not really about vaping. You can apply this to any area of your life. So this is not like a guilt and shame type message. This is also not a like you are the worst person ever kind of message. So it's not a guilt and shame message. It's not like you should do better message. It's also not a we're judging you message. So we're going to talk about some stuff with vaping. And some of you in the room that don't struggle with vaping, this is not ammunition for you to think of yourself better as people who do vape, because that is counterintuitive to the point we're making tonight. So it's not about guilt and shame. It's not about judging other people who do things that you consider ungodly, okay? It's also not a message about God's love in the sense that if you vape, God doesn't love you any less, and if you don't vape, God doesn't love you any more. Does that make sense? Like, your value was settled at the foot of the cross. And so your love, God's love for you has already been declared. We just sang about it. It's like this has nothing to do with how much God does or does not love you. So it's not about guilt or shame. It's not about being able to judge somebody else for something else that they're dealing with that you're not dealing with. And it's also not about, well, God's love is conditional upon these things and what you do or don't do when it comes to these things. So we all cool so far? So how do we talk about this in a way that is beneficial for everybody? Because I get it, when it comes to vaping, it's understandable to know, to kind of wrestle with why this is even a big deal. Some of you are in the room, you're like, why is this even a big deal? Because, like, vaping isn't even as bad as cigarettes, right? Some of you are thinking, it's not like you're gonna go, like, get drunk and drive around the neighborhood in your mom's minivan, right? Like, you're not doing that, it's just vaping, it's just e-cigarettes. It's not like you're having unprotected sex. It's not like you're doing some other kind of hard drug. It's just vaping. It's the gray. In fact, didn't people create vaping as an alternative to like normal cigarettes? So isn't it better? Isn't it like made so that it's not as bad for you? And that's a lot of the logic that people bring to the table when it comes to this. So it begs the question, is this even a big deal? You know, and why should we talk about this? And why does this have what does this have anything to do with my walk with Jesus? Okay, so, and I get where a lot of those questions come from, and even if you get that and you don't if you don't understand why people have that question, and you think for you it's black and white, whether or not you should vape, just hold on to your horses for a second, because we're going to get into this a little bit more and deeper as this message goes on. But like I said earlier, God doesn't love you more if you don't vape. He doesn't love you less if you do. This lesson tonight is about learning how to make good decisions over the things that don't seem like a big deal at the time. Because it can be really easy when it comes to big things like meth or something, like, I shouldn't do meth. That's probably a bad idea, right? Like, that one's a little bit more black and white. But when it's like something like vaping, it's like, okay, so this is about vaping, but it's not about vaping, because what we're really talking about is how do you make those decisions in the gray? How do you make a decision of how to live your life as a Christian with issues that are more gray than they are black and white? And it's a valid question. Students ask about it all the time, and students, it's in your school everywhere. Like, I'm not naive. I know that it's like, I've talked to some of you, and you're like, yeah, like 98% of people at Franklin vape. I don't believe that, but I do understand that it's pretty prevalent. And I get it. In fact, you just drive down 31 in Franklin, there's like 21,000 vape shops, right? Like, so it's kind of relevant to our culture. not only as Americans, but as high schoolers. It's relevant to your culture. So let's talk about this in a way that honors God. This is how we process and make decisions in general. When it comes to big decisions, small decisions, how do we define what is right and what is wrong for our lives? And it's a good life hack to always look to the book of Proverbs when it comes to dealing with some of this, because while vaping specifically may not be in Scripture, because the Bible was written way before vapes became a thing, but it does talk about things and some logic and decision making that you can apply to all kinds of things, including vaping or whatever else. Fill in the blank. So when it comes to decisions that don't seem like a big deal, here's what Solomon writes about it. He's known for his wisdom. He's known for being wise. Known for, and some scholars actually speculate that he wrote the book of Proverbs so that his sons could have more wisdom in their life as they grow. So that's what some people in academia think. But this is what he writes. This is something that can be applicable to all of us. But this is what Solomon writes in chapter 4. He says, "Don't turn your back on wisdom, for she will protect you. Love her, and she will guard you." Next verse. It says, "Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment." So, he personifies wisdom, right? It's kind of like, in Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain Jack Sparrow refers to the Black Pearl as her, as his girl, right? Like, you guys have seen that movie? If not, go watch it. It's on Disney+. Speaking of which, who has Disney+? Yes! I wasted way too much time on Disney+ this last week and the week before. That's beside the point. Okay, so, but what he's saying is like wisdom. Like, I like how simple he said it. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And if all else fails, just develop having good judgment. Right? Sounds pretty fair, right? Sounds like, wow, great life advice, Solomon. That was very deep. But if we sit back and analyze this is so contrary to the way you and I think. Because we don't just think, oh, I should get wisdom. Right? It doesn't make sense. But we do process, when it comes to decision making, we process whether a decision is good or not, and we have logic that we use to get to that. We have personal experience that we use to get to our decisions and the answers for why we believe things. And so Solomon says, don't turn your back on wisdom. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And if that fails, just develop good judgment. And that implies that it takes practice, so don't expect to be perfect right away. Many of you know the secret to life, that you can never be perfect, and it's constantly depressing sometimes. Sometimes you've made a mistake, you just say something and you're like, I wish I could just take that right back. You're not going to be perfect, but we can develop good judgment. So when it comes to decisions that don't seem big, seems like just a little decision, we don't tend to think those through as much. And it's the little decisions that can actually have a greater influence on our lives. It's the little things that build your character over time, not the big decisions you make, every once in a while. So usually we don't think about getting wisdom when we're making a decision. We usually filter our decisions, whether or not to do something, through two questions. You guys ready? The two questions most of us use when it comes to making a decision about participating or not participating in something is, one, is it a big deal, like we've talked about? And two, will I get in trouble for it? Is it a big deal, and will I get in trouble for it? Those are usually, maybe not on the surface, but subconsciously, those are the things we're thinking through. How big of a deal is this? Is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal? How much thought should I devote to this decision? That's what we're doing. And then, will I get in trouble if I do this? See, that kind of thinking lends itself to us coming as close to the line as possible without crossing it. So we ask questions like, is this a sin? If it is, then how close can I get to doing that without actually being a sin? Is smoking cigarettes a sin? If so, can I smoke an e-cigarette and it's not a sin? And we just see how close to the line that maybe we can get. Maybe is sex before marriage a sin? Okay, well, if I do this, then is that a sin? Because we're not technically having sex, right? And we just when we think this way, how big of a deal is it? And will I get in trouble for it? We're really asking, how close to the line can I get without fully crossing it? And that's the opposite of what Solomon is saying here. No. Chase after wisdom. Because it's not about whether or not you'll get in trouble for it, because thinking about long-term implications, you're going to be an adult someday soon. How many of you guys are seniors or juniors? Like, you're going to graduate high school. Some of you are going to live on your own as soon as 6 months from now. And you will have full independence to make whatever decision you want. And you won't get in trouble for it. But that's not a good barometer for whether or not it's a good decision, right? And so if you follow that logic out, we got to maybe ask something else. Maybe whether it's you're deciding, to vape, smoke, drink, sneak out, study, not study, cheat, lie, we ask ourselves, is this a big deal? Will I get in trouble for it? It's almost like we're leaving it up to fate. It just doesn't make sense. But I think Solomon's point here is that there is a better question to ask when it comes to the way we think about the decisions we make. Maybe there is a better question. And basically what he's saying chase after wisdom. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing. Developing good judgment. Maybe instead of asking, will I get in trouble and how big of a deal is it, we should ask a very simple question. You guys ready? It's 3 words. Is it wise? And then you can filter that. No longer is it we're not actually having sex. It's we're kind of coming close to the line, but we're not doing anything that's like the Bible says. Well, is it wise? If you two were to break up, would you feel shame about telling a future husband or wife about it? Is it wise for you to do that, even if it's not technically sex? If you're, when it comes to any decision that you're making, a better question rather than will I get in trouble for this or how big of a deal is it is it wise? Is this what is best for me? Is this going to improve my life? Or will it give me a momentary satisfaction that will be fleeting in the long run? See, the enemy will feed you lies that it's just one little thing. Just a little thing. We're not going even close to the line yet. It's just a little thing. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. You won't get in trouble for it. And before you know it, you've made one little decision after the other because you've trained your mind to think in that way. And then before you know it, all those little steps that were satisfying along the way lead you to a place where you feel so unfulfilled and unsatisfied, and you look at the examples that you want to live for your life, and you think they're miles away from where I am. I don't think I could ever be fulfilled or satisfied because I've made all these little decisions along the way, and I haven't done things I know the right way, but it felt right in the moment. And so, if we think about our decisions that way, it actually lends itself to making us, worse off than we were to begin with. So asking, is it wise? Is a better question. Is it good for you? Because if we define wisdom, let's just define wisdom here. Wisdom is figuring out what's good for you and good for you right now. Wisdom is figuring out what's good for you and what's good for you right now. So there's 2 sides of that. What's good for you long run and what's good for you right now. And if there's conflict between those two, between now you and future you, then it's not wise. So wisdom is figuring out what is good for you and good for you now. So just to clear the air a little bit, not like it was a big mystery or anything, but when it comes to vaping, there are some things I do feel as a position of leadership in front of you, of spiritual guidance, I should say a few things about vaping, just in general. And again, I'm not saying it's a sin. I'm not saying, anything other than I'm just going to say some facts here for you when it comes to this. Some of you, this will be nothing new because you've read it already because you were curious, or because you just around it enough, you just know the answer to some of this. But for some of you that may not know this, I just got to say a couple things. When it comes to developing wisdom, especially around vaping, here's some things that we need to take into consideration. One, it is bad for you. It is not just my opinion. In fact, if you look at WebMD, it says some brands contain chemicals, including formaldehyde, often used in building materials, and another ingredient used in antifreeze that can cause cancer. That's a real thing. It's not my opinion. Catherine Hess at the University of California, Berkeley, and her colleagues studied traces of toxic metals in the e-liquid used in 5 different brands of e-cigarettes. And here's what they concluded. This is a quote for quote. The most concerning of these metals were nickel, chromium, and manganese. The amounts of them varied between brands, but all 3 metals occur naturally in rock formations all over the planet. Inside the body, they can cause trouble though. Research suggests that nickel and certain forms of chromium may cause cancer. Manganese can harm the nervous system. So, in other words, they're saying this is a big deal. In fact, it's causing like holes to form on people's esophaguses and their lungs. And so all this research is coming out now, because for a few years there where it was new, in my last ministry, in my last church, I had some students who vaped, and they're like, it's not a big deal, it's the alternative to smoking, And I said, technically I can't argue with you on that because it's so new, there's not been enough research and studies done on it. But I have a feeling that it's a catch-22. You're going to get down the road and you're going to find out it's actually worse. It's just probably not the wisest thing. Well, now all this research has come out to say, yeah, it's actually way worse than normal cigarettes. And not to mention the fact that a lot of vapes do have nicotine and other things in it, which I'm sure that many of you are aware of. Secondly, it is a waste of energy and money. Anytime you spend money or energy on something that does not help you is a waste. Jewels are expensive. Okay, e-cigs are not the cheapest thing in the world. It costs you money. Now, if you're going to spend money on a counselor, or to spend money on getting a math tutor, or to spend money on learning an instrument, taking private lessons, that helps you, that betters you. That's learning a skill. That's not a waste of money. But to pay lots of money to put a lot of harmful chemicals in your body, wastes your money, and it wastes your time. And it actually hurts you. It's not helpful. There are also very highly addictive qualities in several vapes. And to then, where you get in where we don't even have to talk about vaping, we can just talk about addictions. Anything that you have to use to cope, to satisfy an urge that you are a slave to, that you can't feel normal until you get that. It's not healthy for you because you're depending on something that God never meant for you to rely on. And so there's just several, it's a waste of your energy and your money. 3, it can complicate your home life, right? Any time that you bring something into your home that can potentially come between you and your parents, it complicates your home life. Your home life is probably complicated enough. I know mine is at times. It's just, you don't need the extra stuff to make it more complicated and frustrating when you're at home. You don't need something that's a barrier, which leads to the 4th thing. It starts the lying and hiding cycle, right? If your parents start to ask you questions about what you're doing, whether that's drinking, smoking pot, whatever it is, vaping, if you have to lie and hide about it, it's no good. You're starting a cycle of dishonesty, you're breaking trust, you're not going to have an open line of communication with your parents, you're not going to have the accountability or the help that you actually need. And it's just, it starts this cycle of when you feel like you have to lie and then hide, then you feel like you have to lie to hide what you were hiding, which leads to another lie, and it's just a cycle back and forth, the lying and the hiding, and it just starts all that. You don't want that. And the 5th thing, and probably something I should have started with, was for most of you in this room, it's illegal. So even if it was not a gray area, even if it was black and white, or even if it was okay, it's not okay for anybody under 18. So even if it's something that like driving, if you're to drive driving's not bad, but if you do it before you have a license, that's illegal and that's bad, right? Vaping's the same way. Unless you're 18, you're legally not allowed to have any of it with you. And I know you get in trouble for it at school if you have it at school. So if it's illegal or if it is something that you're breaking rules in order to do it, whether it's the government's rules, your parents' rules, the school's rules, whatever it is, then that just sets you up in a bad position. And you don't want to do that. So that's, when it comes to making decisions in your life, you have to consider several different things along the way. If there's anything I want you to hear, it's this. There is no small decisions. I'm going to say that again. There is no small decisions. The enemy will trick you into thinking that something could be a small decision. But it's the small decisions that build the kind of man or woman that you are. So there is no small decision. How do you know if something's wise? How do you get wisdom? I love how James says it in James, I think it's chapter 5. You can go ahead and put it up on the screen. Chapter 1, verse 5. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and He will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. So sometimes we get in this mindset, it's like, well, if I ask about it, then I'm already if I should know the answer already, then I'm putting myself in a position to be ridiculed for asking because I should know that. No, he's saying God's not going to ridicule you. He's not going to rebuke you. He's not going to be frustrated at you for asking questions. Ask for wisdom. Not just in general, but in the specific areas of your life in which you need wisdom, right? Start by asking God. And God presents Himself to you in many ways. He can give you wisdom through His Word. You can study that. You can gain wisdom through prayer. You can gain wisdom through the people that God has put in your life that are older and wiser than you. You can gain wisdom from God in a lot of different forms. So be on the look. Search for wisdom. The key to not making the decisions that don't seem like they're a big deal, the key to making decisions, whether big or small, is to not do it alone. Because if you can make a decision by yourself, then you can justify yourself into making whatever decision you want in that moment. And you guys, you know what that's like, right? If I don't tell anybody, then I'm trying to stay less, eat less sugar and stuff. If I don't tell anybody that, then the minute I decide those cookies at youth group tonight look really good, I'm going to go eat one, right? Then nobody knows that I violated my own conscience because I made the decision on my own. But if I tell somebody, hey, keep me accountable, I don't want to eat any more cookies. And they see you going up to get more cookies, they better take it off your plate and eat it themselves. Or throw it in the trash can, or make a scene or something. I'm just kidding. But you get what I'm saying. So the point tonight, don't make small decisions alone. I mean, we know we shouldn't make big decisions alone. We consult, different people. We ask our friends. That's all good. But especially with the small decisions, don't make small decisions alone. Open up your thought process to other people. Open up your life to the people around you that care about you, that want what's best for you, that is on the same life mission as you, which is to follow Jesus with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. If you can open yourself up, which takes vulnerability, to the people in your life that care about you most and are striving to be like Jesus, then you can be in a really, really healthy place, even if you're not always making the best decisions, because you got someone alongside you who knows you and knows what you're going through and can own you through every decision you make. And that's where you want to be. Don't make the small decisions alone. So, in conclusion, I love it when preachers said, in conclusion, and it's a 10-minute conclusion. I'm wrapping up, give me one more minute, okay? We good? One more minute? Okay. So, for those of you who don't vape, okay, this is not a license to judge the people who do. This is not a way for you to think you're better or to somehow feel better about yourself because you're making a decision that you see as better than what somebody else has chosen to do. Okay, because somewhere along the line, there's a temptation that's going to come your way that is not going to seem like a big deal to somebody else. But to you, it'll be something you really wrestle with it. And you're going to want somebody to not judge you when you're in that moment. So don't judge the other people who are making the decisions you don't agree with. Okay? For those of you who do vape, I encourage you to think about the things that I mentioned, the 5 things that I mentioned earlier, okay? Take into consideration those things when it comes to searching for wisdom for your own life. And again, no judgment, but I want the best life for all of you. So seek wisdom no matter where you're at. If you can change the question you're asking, you're setting yourself up for a better now and a better future. So instead of asking, how big of a deal is it? How much trouble would I get in? Ask yourself, is it wise? Is it good for me now, and is it good for me later? If you learn to change your question, that'll be a great first step. So don't make small decisions alone. Invite people in, okay? I love you guys. I'm going to pray, and then we'll dismiss into our small groups. Hey, hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you're subscribed so you're notified when we upload future videos. Have a great day.